Yeah.
Oh, and Lion's Eye Diamonds. Forgot those.
Yeah, no LEDs either.
None of those. So let's just run through the basics of it. What do you? You've played a lot of combo elves. I know you've described this deck as like kind of similar. So
yeah,
let's
it's kind
talk
of similar.
about
Well, first of all, can I talk about how I arrived at this deck as opposed to something else?
Sounds excellent.
Well, normally I always play combo elves, but they've recently printed a card called Terminus that happens to be played as a 4-of in the best deck in Legacy right now. For a while, like Terminus has been out, I was still playing elves, but because the countertop Terminus deck wasn't the best deck in the format, it wasn't played that much. But now it's just it's everywhere. It's the second most popular deck in the format, and I'm pretty sure it's going to uptake Rug quite soon. Because I think it's certainly more powerful than Rug.
Okay.
So I went with a different deck that has a good countertop matchup, which is enchantments. You can't Terminus a bunch of enchantments.
It's very accurate.
You can kill all my creatures, but you can't kill my enchantments. So, and it has a similar play style to Combo Elves. It's a slower combo deck as opposed to something like Storm or Belcher or something.
Sure.
But it's a resilient combo deck, and it can go toe to toe with the blue decks and out card advantage them and win in a longer grindier game if need be.
Sure.
So, what was your question?
Yeah, let's just talk about some of the engines, I guess. One of the cool things I like about the deck, you already mentioned how Enchantress's presence is just invulnerable to Terminus, basically.
Correct.
Argothian Enchantress is slightly cheaper and invulnerable to most forms of removal that are being played right now. Like Terminus is one of the few that's common and hits it.
But
everyone else
doesn't really do it.
Swords, Dark Blast, like all those cards.
Like there aren't any bug control decks playing like
Innocent
Edict
Blood
effects
and stuff.
or anything.
Those have all fallen out of favor.
It's more or less immune to removal.
And Green Sun Zenith is one of the ways that you can get Argothian Enchantress. It sort of like doubles as an extra copy.
It's your 9th through 12th Enchantress.
But it also adds some additional functionality, which I find really cool. You've got Eternal Witness in the sideboard, or sorry, in the main deck, times 2. And that lets you pull back any combo pieces you might have lost. It also can let you loop certain cards over and over.
Like if you got a Seal of Removal, that's the Seal of Unsummon in your graveyard. You can go get the Seal of Unsummon, replay it, draw with Enchantress effects, and then sacrifice it to bounce your Witness, replay the Witness, get your seal back, and then you're drawing cards for every time you cast it. It's a little expensive, but it's a good engine.
It's basically a Whispers the Muse style thing that you can just do when the coast is clear. In addition, it gives you the option of sideboarding Gaddock Teague and Harmonic Sliver, which the
Harmonic Sliver has been really nice.
The deck can play them already with Utopia Sprawl and at 1 Savannah. I know I was running
play the 1 Savannah and a few fetch lands to go get it, and then Utopia Sprawl can make white mana. Also, this guy can make white mana sometimes.
Yep, Carpet of Flowers, another one that's worth talking about.
That's a spicy one. It's only good against the blue decks, but it's really good against the blue decks. Good enough that I'm willing to play 2 of them in the main deck and an additional one in the sideboard, even though it doesn't do a darn thing against any of the other non-blue decks, just because it's that good against the blue decks. Although I guess it does do something because it's card type enchantment on it. Yeah, you can draw some cards.
So the Carpet of Flowers can do some neat tricks, mostly with Words of Wind, which we'll talk about really quickly in a second. But Words of Wind lets you bounce your permanents, and the deck chains together a lot of draws, and then makes everybody bounce permanents, letting you chain more draws because you're bouncing enchantments, while your opponents have to just pick up their lands, their creatures, eventually
bouncing enchantments and Cloud of Fairies.
Yes, also.
And that's where the infinite combo comes in. What do you need? You need 3 Wild Growth effects, I think.
You need
3 Wild Growth effects.
You need
2 Enchantress effects.
You need 2 or less lands that make 5 or more mana.
Right. So 3 Wild Growths would do it. Minimum. Obviously, you can have more.
Yeah.
So you need 2. You need 3 Wild Growth effects, a Cloud of Fairies, the Words of Wind, and 2 Enchantresses minimum. 3 Enchantresses if you want to draw your entire deck. Although that's more or less redundant when your opponent has 0 permanents in play.
Yes.
So what you're going to do is you're going to tap for 5 mana, the 2 lands that you've got. You're going to play your Cloud of Fairies to untap them. Tap them again, you get 8 mana. So we're going to play a 1-drop enchantment. We're going to Words of Wind twice. So that lets us bounce a different 1-drop enchantment and the Cloud of Fairies back to our hand.
Yep.
And they have to bounce 2 permanents also. Then you replay the Cloud of Fairies, untap your lands, tap for 5 more mana, replay the 1-drop enchantment, and you use 5 mana each time. You make 5 mana each time. So you just do that over and over and over again, and you just keep swapping in back and forth between the 2 enchantments. You need 2 1-drop enchantments, not 1, because you can't bounce the 1-drop enchantment when it's still on the stack with the Words of Wind. But that's pretty easy to do.
Yeah, the deck's got a lot of them.
So yeah, they're left with no permanents, and you're free to attack them with an army of 1/1 flyers and 2/1 Eternal Witnesses, which is
is your win condition.
It's super elegant. Yeah, the win condition is the engine. So you don't need to waste slots on something like an Emrakul or like a Bane fire effect, something along those lines. Each one of your cogs is has multiple functions. So.
Yep.
Although I would suggest, I got this list online from Andrew Cuneo, Gainsay.
On
Many
Moto.
of you guys know who he is. He more or less invented this version of the deck.
I know he got about fifth in the Premier.
Yeah, he came in 5th in the Legacy Mox.
Oh, the Legacy Mox, okay.
Yeah, and he doesn't have anything in his sideboard to like kill them that turn. But I noticed, but that's because in Moto you don't need something like that. You've got chess clocks, so you don't go to extra turns in Moto. But in real life, if you want to play this deck in real life, I'd recommend something like an Emrakul or a Seal of Fire in the sideboard, or possibly Seal in the main. That might work too, because it does have other utilities, you know, like kill hate bears, draw cards since it's a cheap enchantment. Because you want to kill, if it goes to extra turns, they might just have too much life so that you can't just attack them twice with your fairies and your witnesses, and they'll be at like 3 life or something by the time turn 5 rolls around.
I agree with that. Real life,
I think it might be worth 1 slot in this sideboard.
In real life, it's probably pretty easy to like incidentally stall this deck, even if you're not trying to.
Yep, there are a lot of decisions.
So,
and
I think I've been playing the Seal of Fire in the main on Moto because I wanted to try it out.
Right,
and
it also makes the deck a lot quicker.
Right, I got the suggestion on Twitter when during a conversation between Drew Levin and Owen Turtenwald. Actually,
right,
Owen
I remember that conversation also.
Yep. Drew wrote a little bit about this deck in one of his recent articles also, if you want to go back and find it. Not too much, he just spotlighted it as a cool deck to play in Legacy. It is a very affordable choice, as we've already said.
Right.
The Seal of Fire loop is basically, it's very similar to the Cloud of Fairies loop, except you incorporate the mana to cast Eternal Witness.
Once you get infinite mana, you can just cast the Eternal Witness too, use an additional Words of Wind trigger with an additional Enchantress effect to bounce the Witness back, replay it, go get Seal, cast the Seal, bounce Witness, and there you go. You know, once you got infinite mana, it's easy. Let's see, another couple cool tricks. There's the Exploration trick and the Carpet trick.
The Exploration trick and the Carpet trick are really pretty much the same trick.
Yeah, they're kind of similar.
But basically, Exploration and Carpet of Flowers each view themselves as unique instances when you've had it in play. So say in main phase 1, you use your Carpet trigger to generate some mana. If over the course of the turn, some effect that you might generate, such as a Words of Wind.
Yeah, usually it ends up being Words of Wind.
Bounces a Carpet of Flowers back to your hand. You can recast it.
Recast it, make sure it's a pre-combat main phase. Then you declare your attackers. They look at you funny and they're like, all right. And you say, no attacks. Post-combat, haven't used my Carpet of Flowers yet because it's a new carpet. Makes them in.
Exactly. And Exploration is the same thing, except you don't have to switch phases.
Yeah, the thing with the carpet, you can only do it one extra time per turn because you don't have extra main phases. You can only once per main phase.
Yeah. It triggers at the start of every main phase.
Right. But the Exploration, as many times as you want.
Interestingly, for those of you who have a carpet, I'm pretty sure it has been errated from its current wording in order to be that trigger.
Different. It's a triggered ability that happens at the beginning of each main phase that you have.
The Exploration, however, you pretty much just pick it up after having declared that the land you're playing is your extra land for Exploration. You can even do a float of your actual normal land.
Right. It's kind of similar to those of you guys who might remember back when
Oracle of Moldiah?
Oracle of Moldiah and Jace the Mind Sculptor. Like, if you could bounce your Oracle with Jace, replay the Oracle, now it's a new Oracle, so you get another new land.
Very accurate.
Pretty much same kind of thing. Except you get to bounce your Exploration over and over and over and over again with Words of Wind, because it only costs 1 mana. So you get to put all the lands that you've drawn with all your enchantresses into play more or less. And by that time, it's not really needed.
No, but
it's cool.
Cute.
It's really cool.
Do it.
And it has some added utility in other matches. Since the deck runs the Carpet of Flowers in the main deck and Elephant Grass in the main deck, those cards aren't great. They're very, very bad against a couple of decks. You know, they're basically just blank pieces of cardboard that read enchantment, so they turn into draw spells. Exploration is pretty good against everything. So I have an Exploration in my main. I might add another one in my sideboard later on. I don't know. I'll have to tinker with the deck a little bit. I'm still in my infancy of mastering it, you know. But Exploration it's pretty good against everything. So when the carpets go out against the non-blue decks, or the grass go out against the non-creature decks, the Explorations go in because they're more useful.
Makes perfect sense. Worth concerning yourself with is the deck is obviously very threat light. We've discussed how the threats are actually just part of the engine. So you actually have to watch out because you can be colded by a number of awkward scenarios, most of those involving surgical extraction. A surgical extraction on Words of Wind, I don't think you can ever beat, really.
You could probably beat it, but it involves them having just nothing. You know, like I just don't see a situation where that happens.
Cloud of Fairies getting surgical extracted prevents you from looping in an infinite way.
Right, it's tough, but you can just like kind of upheaval every turn because you just build a critical mass of
actual enchantments.
And, wild growth effects.
Yeah.
You know.
So as long as you have Words of Wind, you can still get them. A Cloud of Fairies, or Cloud of Fairies being gone is not that big a deal, and it is easy to get those extracted because you'll be tempted to cycle them sometimes when you know you're not going to use it anytime soon.
Yeah.
So just be wary of that in post-sideboarded games.
Don't be afraid to cycle those Cloud of Fairies, though, because you can get them back with Eternal Witness pretty easily, and you got plenty of them.
Agree.
One last thing, I think. I don't know if it's the last thing, but this is notable. Force of Will, there's one of in the main deck, and it looks really weird. The first time I saw the deck from Gainsay, he had a Mindbreak Trap in the main, and I was like, what the heck is that doing there? And why is there only one? It's just so weird. But the reason it's in the main is because sometimes against something like a Belcher deck or something that can interact with you, once you've bounced their permanents, sometimes they'll be able to interact with you still to be able to like finagle their way out of the loop. Force of Will just shuts the door. You make infinite mana, you hard cast the Force of Will on whatever they do. Next turn, attack with your Eternal Witness, post-combat, you bounce it back to your hand, replay it, get the force back, they're done. There's no way that they can climb out of that hole. I don't know how important it is yet. It didn't actually end up mattering in any of my matches today, but it has been useful as the one of just I have a Force of Will in my hand and a blue card, and they did something I don't want them to have, so I've pitched something else. So it has had useful utility that way, and there's a couple more in the sideboard for matchups like Belcher or Storm or something like that.
I think in live tournaments, the Force of Will is probably better than the Mindbreak Trap on Moto.
Yeah,
there are
just
a
because
lot
of the
more
metagame.
Belcher decks.
There are Belcher decks on Moto, there are Storm decks on Moto, and there's a lot more sneak attack decks or show and tell decks. Omniscience decks in real life, which Force of Will I think is a lot better.
I agree. Well, we're going to go ahead and throw it to a deck tech that we recorded earlier while we wait for the next round of Legacy to start. Good luck in the next round of Legacy.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in.
Hello and welcome back to the sideboard. I am Ruben Bressler, and I am here with Femus Pan. Femus, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, you qualified for the Invitational by top-8ing the Legacy Open in Las Vegas.
Correct.
With Goblins.
Yeah.
You are not playing Goblins today. You are bringing something